Hello, English 101 students. I couldn't get this to work in the classroom, so I'm going to go over it in an office video as opposed to an in-class lecture. What I'd like to go over is the flash fiction essay, which is due on the 30th of September for this term, and just go over the finer points of it. Make sure that after you watch this video, you take notes while I'm going over this video, and it's probably a good idea to have a copy of the assignment sheet in your hand while you're watching this video. So if you need to pause it right now, go ahead and print out a copy of that assignment sheet. The one looks like, I don't know if you can see it or not, it's probably backwards. Anywho, let's take a look at the due dates first and foremost. The introduction and outline are due in Canvas on the 28th. So the first paragraph of your essay, that should contain the thesis. And then an outline. There is an outline worksheet on Canvas. Also, if you need it, go ahead and email me for the outline worksheet. Do you have to use the outline worksheet? No. But if you're not used to writing an outline, it'd be very helpful. Okay, here's the assignment. Flash, quote-unquote, fiction is generally defined as a short story that's less than 1,500 words. One thing that we should always do, whether we are reading literature or nonfiction, is to read the material with a critical eye. For this assignment, write a 800 to 1,000 word review that discusses what does and does not work for you in the story. By the end of the essay, you should have a strong explanation of whether or not the reader should read the story based on your opinion of it. I expect you to incorporate some or all of the reading techniques that you have read about in chapters 5, 9, 17, 18, 22, 27, 35. Okay, so essentially this is a review-based analysis. This isn't a book report, and I'll get to that in a second. But you're going to pick a short story from one of the authors on the list, and then you are going to review it. So a very brief summary of it, an analysis of the story, and a recommendation to the reader. Should the reader check out this story based on your opinion? That's the basics of it. And we'll get into more detail here in a second. Now for this essay, you'll choose a story by one of the authors on the list provided. If you want to use a story from an author that's not on the list, you must clear it with me first. For whatever story you choose, it should be around 1,500 words or less. If you want to go over 1,500 words, that's fine, but you don't want to get too long because this is a pretty short paper. Okay, continuing on, which is generally less than 5 to 7 double-spaced pages. To give you an idea of length, the story of an hour, which you guys did for Journal 4, on pages 498 to 501 in our textbook is 1,009 words. Now here's a guide for what your essay should contain. Before I get to that though, one thing I want to make sure that you need to be very careful of. Some of these authors, Sherman Alexie for example, Edgar Allan Poe for example, wrote or are writing, in the case of Alexie, both short stories and poems that tend to be a little bit longer. You can't use a poem for this essay. So for example, with Edgar Allan Poe, you wouldn't be able to use The Raven, for example, because it's not a story, it's a poem. So make sure that you're using a short story for your essay assignment. Okay, continuing on the sheet, writing a short story review. A review of a short story should contain the following. An introduction, of course. In the introduction, you should include some basic facts about the story, including title, the author, and the story genre. Genre is a category of story. So, for example, if you were looking at movies, science fiction would be a genre, horror would be a genre, romantic comedy would be a genre. You should also say something about your opinion of the story along with your reasons for liking or disliking it. The subject plus significance of your thesis, see the thesis statement in PowerPoint if you don't know what I'm talking about, should be your story and your opinion of it. So subject, story. Significance, your opinion of it. Whether or not the reader should actually check the story out. Summary. Briefly summarize the story. No more than 5 to 7 sentences. I will count sentences. If your summary is more than 7 sentences, I'm just going to cross it out in the feedback that you get on Canvas. So make sure that your summary of the story is no more than 7 sentences. Discuss the setting, the main character or characters, and the main events or problems that the characters experience. Personal reflection. Discuss what you like or dislike about the story. Give reasons to support your opinion using good evidence from just the work. And this is very important. As you'll see later, there's going to be a zero tolerance policy for plagiarism on this. You can't use any outside sources, so nothing like eNotes, SparkNotes, 123 Help Me. You couldn't use those anyway, but especially don't use them on this paper. So just evidence from just the work, no outside sources in detail, which will be building on the skills you incorporated into the descriptive essay. You may want to compare and contrast the story with other stories you've read by the same author or in the same genre. This is kind of optional, but you do have to give kind of a reflection, why you like the story, give evidence to support that opinion. Critical analysis. In the critical analysis, some of the questions to explore are below. This is not a checklist by any means. You couldn't get through all this stuff in an 800-word paper. What this is for is to generate some brainstorming ideas for you so you can write a more effective essay. This is not a checklist. You can come up with your own analysis if you like. In addition, there's not enough space in the paper to answer all these questions. Use them to help with brainstorming. Okay, so one question you might ask is, what is the author's purpose for writing the story? Is the author successful in achieving that purpose? What's the setting of the story? Is it appropriate to the genre? How well are the characters developed? Do they feel, speak, and act in a believable way? How well is the plot structured? Is the action suspenseful enough? Are the events too predictable? What is the theme or central idea of the story? Does the story have a coda or a lesson? Think of a coda as like a parable or a fable, something that's it's a story about one thing, but it's supposed to have greater meaning or a lesson to it. Does the story have a twist or unexpected ending? Does the author use any literary devices such as metaphor, simile, alliteration, those types of things? So these are just questions to help you with your analysis of the story. Conclusion. In the conclusion, you should evaluate the story and either recommend it or not recommend it to others, depending on what you think, whether you think it's worthwhile reading. Now, before you begin writing the review, make sure you read the story closely and take good notes. When I say read the story closely, use in the Writing About Literature chapter, there is a how to read a piece of fiction kind of checklist. Go through that with your story. Look at the author's biography. Look at the title, plot, characters, all that sort of stuff. Go through those questions as you're evaluating the story. So do that active reading that we talked about with the first unit, where you read the story once through to get a gist of it, and then the second time around, that's when you make your detailed notes about it. Okay? Let's see. In grading this paper, I'll be looking for a depth of ideas and analysis, use of supporting evidence, and overall strength and clarity of the writing itself. Please do note that this is not a plot summary of the story. You'll have a short plot summary in your essay, but it cannot be the entire paper. You're not going to get a passing grade on this paper if it's a book report. Very short summary, and then get to the meat and potatoes, which is your analysis of it. Okay, once again, plagiarism alert. All of your work in this paper should be your own. It's not necessary to use outside sources beside the story in the paper. There will be a no tolerance policy on plagiarism for this paper, so do not copy from the internet sources, reviews, etc. No tolerance means that your paper will earn a 0 for using sources other than the story in the essay. Now, if you're comparing it to another work by the author, that's fine. But this is referring to any type of analytical websites or things like that. I don't want you to use those. All right, page 2. I'll let you read the formatting stuff on your own, but do remember that you can't turn the essay unless it's correctly formatted, so make sure that you're following these guidelines. Now, the author list. You may pick any short story around or under 1,500 words from one of the following authors. Sherman Alexie, as I mentioned earlier. Any of the Bartholomew brothers, Don, Frederick, or Stephen. Ann Beatty, Ron Carlson, Kate Chopin, Robert Coover, Dave Eggers. You'll probably know some of his work. He wrote the screenplay for Where the Wild Things Are that came out a few years ago. Let's see, Ernest Hemingway, Amy Hempel, Tim O'Brien. Now, he does have some longer short stories. Make sure you're sticking to the shorter ones. Grace Paley, Edgar Allan Poe, Curtis Sittenfeld, or any of the stories from the Huffington Post article where the link is on the assignment sheet. Go ahead and copy and paste that into your browser, and you can look at those stories. I think there's 7 stories in that article. Okay, and then the rubric's going to be similar to the descriptive essay rubric, but do keep in mind you need to eliminate the second person in your essay, otherwise you're going to lose a lot of points on your grammar and mechanics grade. That's you, your, y'all, etc. All right, well, that's the long and short of it with the essay assignment. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. If you have any questions about what's, you're not quite sure which story to use, that's also a question that please ask me as soon as you can. I would recommend, let's see, the intro and outline is due on the 28th. So I'd say pretty much no later than the 23rd you should have your story picked up in order to have enough time to create a good paper. All right, well, that's it for me. Again, let me know if there's any questions.